how's it going? My name's Alex and this is my 2019 Ram 3500 crew cab long bed dual rear wheel with the Cummins turbo diesel and the 68 RFE transmission. It's 4x4 and it has a 373 rear axle gear ratio. And earlier today I hit 50,000 miles. And in this video I'd like to share my thoughts about this truck. First and foremost, I want to show you the paint code and the trim level. It's right here inside the door. Before we get started, really quick, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is an enterprise long-term rental. And I have this truck for 60,000 miles, so I'm getting ready to turn it in soon. So what that means though is I do not get to choose any of the options. So even though Ram might offer some of the options on a higher trim, I did not get to choose any of the options on this truck. Now, I want to split up this video into 3 sections. First thing is going to be the exterior, second thing is going to be the interior, and the third thing is going to be the drivetrain and under the hood. Now, as you can see, I do use this thing for work. I am a full-time transporter, and to give you a little bit of perspective, I actually picked this thing up June 17th. Today, I'm recording this video, it's September 20th. So in a matter of 3 months and 3 days, I did 50,000 miles. So keep that in mind when we're taking a look at the exterior, the interior, and under the hood. As for each section, there's gonna be pros and cons to each section. So let's get started with the exterior pros. First thing is the headlights. Because they changed the shape and redesigned it, that there's actually nothing here that curves or that does any kind of turns. On the 4th gens, it was obviously different headlights. They were actually harder to clean. And so these headlights, they are really easy to clean. So when there's bugs on your headlights, because it's more of a flat surface, the brush, you can just wipe off all the bugs. As for the cons on this truck, a couple of things. This right here, the badge, when you're sitting in the truck, you can kind of see that there's a big gap right here, and that just doesn't look good. Another con is because the hood is no longer behind the grill, it does seem like in a windy, there you go, that's what it does. When it's windy, it wobbles, and so you can see that, or like this, there you go. So when you're driving and it's windy outside, you do see your hood wobble. And so I don't know if they switch to a 2-latch design that might solve it. I'm not sure, but there is only 1 latch in the middle. Moving on to the third con, I don't like the chrome simulators. I did take them off. They're in my bed. And the reason I took them off is it does get in the way of your balancing weights. So at the end of the day, they never actually look good because they're never flush, because you have to put weights to balance your wheels. I would almost say just give me the normal black wheels without the chrome simulators and let me save some money. The other con is I don't know if this is just on my truck. I'm pretty sure it's not, but these lights don't work as running lights. Now, you get this light right here on the fender, you get the 3 lights underneath and the other light on the fender, but this does not actually work as a daytime running light, which I'm not sure if that's just this truck specifically. I double checked, all my fuses look like they're in good order, so I'm not really sure why that is. So that'll do it for the exterior. A couple of minor little things. This is just what you notice when you use your truck day in, day out. You know, in the windy conditions, you do notice the hood wobble. However, at the same time, when you pull into a truck stop to fill up, you do notice that it's much easier to clean your headlights when there's a bunch of bugs on it. So it's these subtle differences that make me want to say it's almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, essentially for the exterior. So that'll do it for the exterior. Let's go inside and see what the pros and cons are on the interior. So first and foremost, as you can see, I do have 50,092.8 miles. And as you can see right there, I idled for 1,060 hours. I drove for 848, and that's a total for 1,908 hours for 50,092 miles. So for the interior pro, I will say that this little section right here is a perfect spot for your wallet and your key. And I must say, when I drove my 2015 Ram that didn't have this, I really didn't have a spot to put my wallet and my key. So this redesign, or this little addition, is absolutely wonderful, and I use that a lot. Very much missed it when I switched to my old truck, so that's a good job, thumbs up. As for the con, I will say one of the things is the shifter. It does wobble a lot. I'm not sure why. It's in park or it's in drive, it doesn't really matter. It still wobbles just as much. Another con is this truck does not have a telescoping steering wheel. It does have a tilt steering wheel, but it is not telescoping. And so in my 10,000 mile review, I mentioned that I hit my knee on this little section for the 4x4, and that touches my knee. The reason that happens is because I am tall. This truck, because it doesn't have a telescoping steering wheel, I do have to sit closer to reach. Therefore, a $50,000 to $60,000 truck without a telescoping steering wheel doesn't really make sense to me. And the last con is, I'm gonna say Uconnect and this 5-inch screen, right? And granted, you can upgrade to the 8.4, the much larger one, and you can even do the 12-inch, which is the really large one. However, this is the one this truck came with, and this is probably the one most people will get. And the problem with it is I think there's very limited RAM. And so what happens is you overload that RAM really quickly. For example, when you do radio media really fast, it doesn't keep up. It slows down too quickly, and it lags behind. The other thing is, for some reason, it doesn't work very well with the Bluetooth on the iPhone. I'm not sure if it's better with the Android. I don't have an Android phone to test with, but I have had a lot of problems with the Bluetooth connectivity. So that's gonna do it for the interior. Now let's look under the hood. Now, under the hood, we have the almighty, all-powerful, all-capable 6.7 liter Cummins turbo diesel. And I must say, it does do a couple of things really well. And so these are some of the pros for this engine. One, it's relatively fuel efficient. Now, I'm always towing. I get between 10 and 12 miles per gallon. Two, it stays relatively cool. I'm really surprised with the redesign on the grill, how much cooler the coolant stays when you're towing up a hill. So to give you an example is my 2015 Ram, I had the coolant bypass that takes coolant from the back of the block and puts it to the front. My coolant would trigger the fan climbing the same grades that I'm climbing with this truck. The fan would come on at like 215 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas this truck, it almost never even hits 215 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm really impressed what they did with the redesign on the grill and the cooling in general. It works really, really well. My Enterprise long-term rental includes all of the maintenance for the truck. So I don't pay for oil changes, I don't pay for the fuel filters, I don't pay for any of that. And so far, I've done 5 oil changes and 2 fuel filters. So on the next one, I have to do oil change and fuel filter. That's just how the Enterprise program works. Every other oil change, I'm supposed to do a fuel filter, and so that's why there's more oil changes than fuel filters. Speaking of which, the fuel filter on the back was redesigned, and so the first time I took it in to get serviced on that rear fuel filter, it is different. And what that means is many shops don't even have them. And they told me, we got into an argument with the service technician. I told him, I'm like, look, it's not a screw-in filter. And he argued with me, and ultimately I was right. You know, I don't like being right all the time, but in that situation, you know, I've realized the truck has a different fuel filter on the frame rail, and that's why that was an interesting conversation. So as for the engine pros and cons, the pros are, I haven't had any issues. It runs good, it stays cool. The cons are, the emissions stuff on here is really aggressive. Like when I get 12 miles per gallon, within a matter of, I don't know, maybe 50 miles, it all of a sudden drops to 9, drops to 8. Why? Because it's doing a regen or something along those lines, and it just automatically drops. The terrain hasn't changed, the load hasn't changed. I've been on cruise control the entire time, and for some reason, you do notice that fluctuation in miles per gallon when something is going on with the emission. Now, moving on to the transmission, as you can see, my dipstick is on the passenger side. That means I do have the 68 RFE. And because I have the 68 RFE, that means this Cummins is actually detuned from the factory. I believe it's like 865 pound-foot instead of with the AS69 RC transmission, which would mean the dipstick is on this side, it comes with 1,000 pound-foot of torque. So I do have the derated engine because the 68 RFE cannot handle that much torque. And because this is the detuned engine, you do notice a significant power loss. And so to be honest, I don't think there's a single pro in the transmission category. I really think this is a pile of garbage transmission, and I'm so glad this is a rental and I turn it back in, because there is a massive amount of shift flare when you're driving down the highway and you go from 6th to 5th. it has like 500 RPM of shift flare. So it goes, let's say you're cruising at like 1500, it jumps up to 25 and then settles in at 2000. Instead of just going from 1500 to 2000, you know, when you downshift. And the temperatures aren't great either. On my AS69 RC, the transmission was always at 167, 168, literally never moved. This thing fluctuates a little bit more. Sometimes it's 170, sometimes it's 175. So no pros for the transmission, only con. Moving on to the 4x4, I mean, I got it in June and it's only September now, so I haven't actually used the 4x4, not even once. As for the 373 gear ratio, I do think that is a perfect middle ground gear ratio. Now, what I would want to see is like a 392 or something like that, or a 411, but with a 7-speed or 8-speed transmission. That would be ideal. This way you get the mix of both worlds. You get decent startup, but decent highway mileage as well. Now, a couple of little pros and cons overall on the truck is this thing does like to go through front tires for some reason. As you can see, oh, maybe you can't see, but it's really, so it goes like this, right? And so this is really choppy. These are really choppy. And these are slanted this way in the middle. So in general, and this is a new set of tires that they just put on. So this thing is wearing out the front tires really bad. The rear tires, on the other hand, they're doing perfectly fine. No complaints here. The first ones lasted, these are almost brand new. I think I got these at like 44,000. And so there's only like 5,000 or 6,000 on those. So no complaints about the rear tires. So to summarize this review, I do think the 2 steps forward, 1 step back makes a lot of sense. Specifically because some things they don't have to touch, yet they do, and some things they do touch and it improves. And so that's why I say 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The other kind of review I could give this truck is FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automotive, spent a ton of money on the engine and they made everything else as cheap as possible. That's another way to look at it. So this is a safe bet. You know, you're getting a decent Cummins engine, but it's surrounded by very cheap garbage parts. And ultimately, that's going to be a choice you're going to have to make. The electrical and the transmission will fail way before the Cummins ever even thinks about failing. Don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love to test the AS69 RC transmission. But again, I get these trucks from Enterprise and I'm not getting any special deals or discounts. It's not sponsored or anything like that. I literally pay. You can go walk into Enterprise and say, hey, I want the long-term rental, and it's 22 cents a mile. You can go do that. That's what I'm currently paying for it, 22 cents a mile every single mile. So I don't get any special deals or discounts, but I also don't get to choose what they order, and they, for some reason, order the 68 RFEs. My next truck that I already ordered from Enterprise is going to be a Ford, and so I will have direct comparison coming up soon, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me in this video. Comment below what are your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.